As I'm sure you could guess by the name, the DeadRedditors subreddit is a place for announcing the deaths of Redditors. In this episode of Disturbing and Controversial Subreddits, we're going to take a look at some of the obituaries on here, as well as the accounts and backstories of the deceased, from people who died after documenting their illnesses to others who died suddenly under more nefarious circumstances. Let's investigate. If you enjoy internet mysteries and generally disturbing content, feel free to subscribe and turn on notifications for more content like this. If you're interested in supporting the channel, you can become a Ko-fi member or a channel member to gain access to uncut videos and other perks, or you can leave me a tip by clicking the thanks under this video. Thanks to anyone who considers this. This video will centre around death and will cover a range of causes, from terminal illness to murder. Viewer discretion is advised. You can click the link in the description to become a Ko-fi member and watch an uncut and ad-free version of this video, which features an extra entry that was too graphic for this cut. I'm alive, not for much longer though, but not living. That was the final comment by a user named Vica on the dermatillomania subreddit, which is for people with compulsive skin picking. Going off a past post where she revealed her age at the time, she would have been 31 or 32 when she posted this comment. Most of Vica's posts were related to her health, and it seems she worried a lot about it. As you probably assumed from the subreddit she made her final comment on, she suffered with dermatillomania, and although she didn't seem to have many other specific diagnoses, she experienced various symptoms that she worried were a sign of something serious. She would often post photos of her feces on medical subreddits, concerned about the appearance, that it may have blood in it or parasites. She posted photos of a persistent spot on her breast and a brown mark on her neck, asking if these could be skin cancer. At one point, she asked if she could get a wart or infection in her eye from scraping wart tissue off her foot and some of it flying into her eye. Another time, she forgot to change her sanitary pad for 13 to 14 hours and asked the periods subreddit if she was likely to get toxic shock syndrome, a UTI or pelvic inflammatory disease, etc. She'd had various doctor's appointments and tests done for a wide range of symptoms, such as biopsies, colonoscopies and blood tests. One comment in November 2021 listed some of the tests she'd had and the results, quote, "I had my first melena December 2020. January 2021, colonoscopy, normal. March 2021, capsule endoscopy, poor visibility, still considered normal. September 2021, gastroscopy, chronic gastritis. September 2021, abdominal MRI, pancreas divisum. Doctors won't help me anymore, even though I have melena stools every week." Reading back through her post history with no knowledge of how her story ended, you might be wondering if she was suffering with illness anxiety disorder, a mental illness where people have a persistent fear of serious or life-threatening illness despite few or no symptoms. Although Vica seemed to be experiencing some potentially significant symptoms, hence the need for medical tests, she did seem very paranoid about becoming ill before she even had any symptoms. For example, when she posted asking about the likelihood of getting toxic shock syndrome. She also mentioned multiple times that doctors won't help her anymore, which perhaps implies they'd done all the tests they could and didn't find anything life-threatening. I'm not a doctor, and even if I was, I wouldn't have enough medical information from her Reddit posts alone to diagnose such a condition, but considering she said in a comment that she suffered with anxiety her whole life, it's possible that some form of health anxiety was part of that. That doesn't mean she wasn't actually suffering with a serious physical health condition too though, and she confirmed this in one of her final comments on Reddit. Vica had made a post on the poop subreddit in November 2021 with a photo of her poop looking very dark coloured, asking, "Can blueberries cause stools this dark/black?" She went to the doctor the next day and updated in a comment, quote, "I went to the doctor today. He told me to go to the ER, but they sent me back home. Again. The situation is not alarming. WTF, I had 4 Melinas yesterday and horrible abdominal pain. If you bleed more, how much more? We can check your hemoglobin again. They refused to order abdominal CT or gastroscopy. I can't take it anymore. At this point, I know I'm gonna die soon and I probably have cancer." A few months later, another user commented asking if she had seen a new doctor, and she replied, "It turned out to be pancreatic cancer, and there's nothing to be done." It was 7 months later that she made her final comment, implying she didn't have long left, and there's been no activity on her account since. On the 23rd of November 2023, there was a post on the DeadRedditors subreddit titled, "RIP Vica." She sought answers to her health problems on Reddit to no avail. I didn't know her, but came across one of her posts long ago related to her health issues. She was having several, and doctors had pretty much given up on her. She was convinced she had cancer and was going to die soon and couldn't get answers. One day posted a comment about how she did eventually end up being diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. Her last activity on Reddit was this comment, "I'm alive, not for much longer though, but not living." That was back in March. People responding asking if they were still about have gone unanswered, so I guess she has since passed away. RIP Vica. So Vica's death hasn't been definitively confirmed, but judging by her sudden inactivity on Reddit and no return for nearly a year and 8 months now, it seems likely that she passed. Pancreatic cancer is one of the deadliest cancers and it progresses rapidly. Because it's often diagnosed late, the survival rate is relatively low, with only around 10% of people surviving for 1 year or more after diagnosis, and 1% surviving 3 years or more if the cancer is distant, meaning it's spread to another part of the body. Considering Vica was experiencing symptoms for quite some time before she got diagnosed, it certainly wouldn't be surprising if she didn't make it long after her diagnosis. However, if you Google her username, you will find a couple of other social media accounts under the same name that are very much still active, with posts as recent as just a few days ago. The specific spelling of her username is pretty obscure, so I'd be surprised if it's someone else with the same name and exact same spelling. It could be a friend or family member who took over her account after she died, but there's no mention of that anywhere, so I'm wondering if she is still alive. I mentioned the possibility of some kind of condition relating to health anxiety, and that might seem more plausible now if Vica is still alive. That doesn't necessarily mean she lied about having cancer, even though she went from saying, "I probably have cancer," to "it turned out to be cancer." Perhaps a doctor mentioned the possibility of cancer and she assumed the worst and genuinely believed she did have it, or maybe she got diagnosed. I really hope that is the case and that she's doing better now, but it's also possible that she really did have cancer and she's still undergoing treatment. She said there was nothing that could be done, but that might have been based on how she was feeling rather than what a doctor actually told her. As I said, the outlook isn't good with pancreatic cancer, but up to 10% of patients who receive an early diagnosis become disease-free after treatment, so there is hope. If the cancer was caught before it spread, there's a decent chance Vica would still be alive now, even if she wasn't cured. Ultimately, we really have no idea what the situation is, so I ask that you don't attempt to contact Vica on Reddit or elsewhere. Reddit seems to be the only place she posted about her health problems, and she chose not to post on there since for a reason, so please respect her decision. Charlotte Angie, real name Carol Mertese, was an Italian actress who starred in various not-safe-for-work videos. She began posting on Reddit in September 2021 to promote her OnlyFans account, which she created after losing her job due to COVID. She quickly became quite popular and moved from her hometown to Milan, where she would have more opportunities. But just 4 months after she created her Reddit account, she suddenly stopped seeing her friends and family and deleted most of her social media accounts. Her family would receive frequent messages from her informing them she was out of the country for work and that she planned to leave the adult film industry soon. Something seemed off though, as she refused to take any calls, and eventually weeks passed and no one had heard her voice, let alone seen her in person. A few weeks later, a man noticed a severed hand poking out of a black plastic bag on a mountain road around 2 hours away from Milan. He reported it to the police, who eventually found about 15 more pieces of the woman's body scattered around, including a head that had been completely burnt. On these body parts were a total of 8 tattoos. Photos of these circulated in newspapers and online, and Charlotte's family noticed that the tattoos resembled some of hers. They messaged her and got a reply. "These tattoos look like mine, but luckily I am fine." Worried, but convinced she must be alive if she was replying to the messages, they didn't take any further action. It was only when Charlotte failed to show up at a lap dancing club she was supposed to perform at that a fan decided to report her missing. A reporter had also become suspicious after noticing that the unidentified victim's tattoos seemed to match Charlotte's, so he contacted her on WhatsApp, mentioning the murder victim. She replied, "A number of people have told me about that girl. Fortunately, I am fine." Then she suddenly went quiet when he asked her to send a voice note to prove it really was her talking to him, and that's when he contacted the police. A DNA test was conducted on the body parts, and it was determined that the victim was Charlotte, so who had been sending the messages? Police received information that Charlotte had been involved with her 43-year-old neighbour David Fontana. When first questioned, he said he knew Charlotte but had no knowledge of her disappearance or murder, implying they were only acquaintances. During the investigation, police found CCTV footage showing the pair meeting, and when searching David's house, they found black plastic bags that appeared to match those that Charlotte's body parts had been found in. After being confronted with the evidence, David finally confessed and explained how Charlotte had visited his home on the 20th of January. They decided to play some kind of game in the bedroom involving a hammer, and he ended up losing his temper and murdering her. I really don't understand how one just loses their temper and ends up killing someone with a hammer, but thankfully it doesn't sound like the jury went easy on him. He filmed the game on his phone, and police were able to recover the footage. After the murder, he cut her up and stored the pieces in a freezer in her house for about 2 months while he continued life as normal, replying to messages sent by Charlotte's friends and family, and even paying her rent to make it look like she was still alive. After a few weeks, he bagged up the body parts and dumped them a couple of hours' drive away. He was eventually sentenced to 30 years in prison. On the 29th of March 2022, a post was made on DeadRedditors titled, "RIP Charlotte Angie, murder victim." It read, "She was an Italian actress in Milan, murdered by her neighbour on January 2022. The bald guy you can see on her profile in some of her videos, named David Fontana, he killed her, put her in her own freezer for 2 months, then cut her body in 15 pieces and unceremoniously dumped her in the mountains in 4 trash bags. found by locals that periodically clean the territory from tourist trash. She left a 5-year-old son that luckily was away and living with his father. There doesn't appear to be any posts on Charlotte's Reddit account now that feature David, but quite a few of her posts have been deleted, so I'm wondering if moderators removed these after finding out what happened. I can't confirm for sure that's the case, but considering the pair were filming a video right before he murdered her, it wouldn't be surprising. Charlotte's last Reddit comment was on the 30th of December 2021, just 3 weeks before her tragic murder. Lodo101 was a user who, during his few active months on Reddit, posted pretty frequently in a variety of subreddits. His account was created in November 2017, but he only began posting in September 2019. It seems he was into gaming, art, and anime, and he also posted occasionally in No Sleep, a place for fictional scary stories, and perhaps more notably, Lolitery, which according to the description is, quote, an anti-lolicon/anti-pedophile force dedicated to the protection, safety, well-being, and defense of all children, real and fictional. We are committed to the destruction and abolition of lolicon and pedophilia, and those who support them. This subreddit was created in September 2018 and has around 34,000 members, but isn't particularly active, with the most recent post being 3 months ago. On the 10th of February 2020, just 5 months after Lodo became active on Reddit, there was a post on DeadRedditors made by one of the Lolitery moderators titled, Rest Soundly Lodo101. It read, I have been informed by the brother of Lodo101 that he tragically passed away recently, hit by a drunk driver while on his motorbike. His brother asked that I memorialise his account and found this subreddit as a result. I may not have been one of Lodo's longtime friends, but I could always tell he was a good man, and a responsible one at that. He was very supportive of Lolitery, and didn't let it overshadow what he needed to do in his personal life. He was one of our first agents that I personally worked with in his endeavours, and it was always very enjoyable to work with him. He was kind, down to earth, and his help was invaluable in the time I got to work with him. Wherever he is now, I hope he is resting well, and I look forward to the day I can thank him directly for everything. Posts like these are some of the most sobering on the subreddit. All are tragic and scary in their own way, but it's easy to disconnect when you hear about someone being brutally murdered and think that could never happen to you. Of course that's not true. Anyone can be murdered, but it's just so hard to imagine that in real life, that someone could be evil enough to purposefully take the life of another person. What happened to Lodo was not an intentional murder. I'm not saying that to minimise it or to absolve the perpetrator, because they still made an incredibly irresponsible decision that resulted in the loss of a life. But any one of us could die in this way at any moment. It just feels more realistic, for lack of a better word, and that's terrifying. Someone doesn't have to target you. They don't have to be some sadistic person that would take enjoyment out of torturing you. They could just be an average person who doesn't consider the consequences of their actions, and that's all it can take to end your life. A 31-year-old woman named Ashley created a Reddit account under the name F This Gonna Get Lit in October 2019. She mostly posted in the crippling alcoholism subreddit, and although the majority of her posts have been removed, you can get the gist of her story from the remaining comments. As you can infer from the main subreddit she posted in, she had experienced alcohol addiction for quite some time. She managed to get sober a few times, but she temporarily started drinking again after she was diagnosed with glioblastoma, which is the deadliest form of brain cancer, with only 6.9% of patients surviving 5 years. In November, she started some kind of experimental treatment and said her doctor believed it could extend her life by several years. Despite being in such a difficult situation, she never lost her sense of humour and often made light-hearted jokes about her alcohol problems, her cancer treatment, and what she'd look like when she lost her hair. On the 11th of December 2019, Ashley made a post titled, "Having surgery tomorrow." The post itself has been removed, but the surgery was for the cancer, and the comments seemed to show that she was feeling relatively optimistic about it. She'd already informed the community that if anything happened, her friend would update them. Ashley actually edited the post to say she made it through the surgery, but that was presumably her last activity on Reddit. The next day, her friend made a post, and sadly it wasn't good news. Here are a few excerpts. "I just wanted to let you know that Ashley passed away after her surgery. She didn't make it, she had a stroke and died. She told me to post here if anything went wrong. Told me right after I saw her. I cut my trip short and surprised her to be there for her. I think she had a feeling something bad was going to happen. Right after I left the hospital, she had a stroke. I'm heartbroken and dead inside. I got the call from the doctor a couple of hours ago since she had me as her emergency contact, and I'm still crying like a baby. We knew her death was likely imminent, but not this soon. She was such a light. I hope she brought light to you too during her time on here. I know you guys meant a lot to her. I'm in shock right now and details are not my forte, but I'll try to post if I learn more. She really just wanted to make the world a better place, and now she's gone. I don't know what to do. She has no family nearby, and her sister is MIA, and now I need to plan a funeral. This is the message she told me yesterday to give you in case anything happened. Y'all have given me something to live for. I am so grateful to have connected with all of you. If, God forbid, something happens to me, I've told my bud Marissa to give you this message, so hopefully you never see this. My life has not been easy, and I thought no one cared about me, but all of you have shown me otherwise. Thank you for your kindness, your empathy, and your lack of judgment. It may sound cliche, but I love each and every one of you. Here's to hoping this doesn't have to get posted, and I get to see you at the proposed CA Fest 2020. Some things you may not have known about Ashley I'd like to share. When she adopted her dog, he had been up for adoption for over a year. No one wanted him because he was so fearful and anxious. She took him in and he transformed under her care for the better. She loved to bake and before she got sick had started a side business baking and decorating cakes. She loved to hike and recently got into foraging and mushroom hunting once again before she got sick. She was a huge baseball fan, and I'm so glad she got to see her Nationals win the World Series. She never judged anyone, ever. She once told me that empathy is crucial and we never know what a person is going through, so we should not judge that person unless we have lived their life. She loved to garden and had a cute little herb garden in her backyard that she loved to tend. She was a total nerd and embraced it. She told me she was afraid of death and the prospect of what comes after. That's all I've got for now. Honestly, I'm a total mess at the moment. I need to figure out her funeral plans and just take time to absorb what happened. I still can't believe she's gone. Sorry if I'm a broken record, it's just hard to accept. Thank you for all you did for Ashley. You made her final months a bit more pleasant and enjoyable despite the circumstances. In case you weren't aware, her username was fthisgonnagetlit. I googled how to link on Reddit, so message me if that didn't work so I can fix it. She did relapse after her diagnosis, but got back on the wagon and was committed to her sobriety. She was a gem and will be missed. Sorry for rambling, I just feel so empty right now, so excuse the word vomit. The comments were filled with condolences from those who had been following Ashley's story, and others who had only just heard about her. A post was made on the DeadRedditors subreddit too, quote, "Sometimes I deep dive random subreddits, and today I did that in crippling alcoholism. A few months ago, she posted that she was going into surgery, presumably related to her glioblastoma diagnosis a few months previous, and even gave her full name and an address people could send stuff to. Her last comment was shortly before she went into surgery, it seems. Using the date and her name, I found her obituary online." The comments on this post also provided a few extra details, including that Ashley's father died less than a year before her cancer diagnosis, and her mum died shortly after. It's a really depressing story all round. However, a number of users were skeptical of it and believed the whole thing was a fabricated tale for attention, and that Ashley's friend who informed the community of her death was actually Ashley herself, who is still alive. This seems to have started when Ashley shared her name and the hospital she was having the operation at after people asked if they could send her cards and flowers. These deliveries were declined by the hospital, apparently for the reason that no one with her name had been admitted there. Ashley's friend updated the post, claiming that Ashley was a resident at the hospital she was having the surgery at, and because of an incident that occurred a couple of years ago with a doctor that was having a procedure there, the hospital stopped keeping doctors' and residents' names in the patient file. There was a comment on the DeadRedditors post covering some of the other doubts people had about all this, quote, "I don't find it unbelievable that people would fake shit on the internet. That's like half the content of the entire internet. She has a 3-sentence obit on a site where anyone can create an obituary for anyone, real or not. Only 2 people left comments despite her having many friends. She has no obituary in any newspaper or any other source. Flower deliveries for her were declined by the hospital pre-surgery because no one by her name was admitted there. Her friend, likely the same person, backtracked and suddenly claimed that was because Ashley was a resident physician at George Washington University Hospital. There is zero evidence of an Ashley Thompson working there in that capacity. The nurse brought her sushi. Shouldn't she have been NPO before major brain surgery? She's back on Reddit only an hour after brain surgery. She talks about cancer like someone who knows nothing about medicine. I doubt that would even be possible for a doctor who is actively trying to look like they aren't a doctor on the internet. There is simply no evidence that the person she claimed to be is someone who ever existed, and there is compelling evidence that she was not hospitalized at GWU Hospital, much less that she suffered a fatal stroke following this unproven hospitalization. It's also really bizarre the way her friend who posted the update keeps updating to say she's done because no one believes her, and goodbye, then returns like hours later to say the same thing. This happens 8 times. This is the behaviour of a mentally unstable, attention-seeking person, not a grieving friend carrying out someone's final wishes. She is clear to say like 6 different times how terrible she is at Reddit, and has never even been on Reddit before, and it's painfully obvious that she knows exactly how Reddit works, and she follows all the usual conventions of Reddit that simply would not be intuitive or possible for someone logging in and making their very first post. I don't know her / whoever she claims to be. I have no investment in this. I hadn't heard of her Reddit handle until an hour ago, but it didn't take much reading to be convinced that she was a fraud. I'm honestly not sure what to believe with all this. The commenter makes a couple of compelling points, and the story Ashley's friend gave about the hospital not keeping her name in patient records does seem a little odd, especially considering Ashley gave her name and the address of the hospital for people to send cards. If she worked there, surely she'd know they wouldn't be able to accept them. That said, I don't know how hospitals work, maybe that is a common occurrence. I found the obituary online and it does say she worked at the hospital, and also includes 11 photos of her that don't show up anywhere else when I reverse image search them. I'm not sure why Ashley would even share her name if she faked the whole story. It probably wouldn't have been her real name if so, but people are going to look her up, and if the details don't fit, they're not going to believe it. Anyway, either a woman really did die from cancer, which is absolutely tragic, or she felt the need to fake having cancer, which is awful. I'd be interested to hear your thoughts in the comments, plus any suggestions you might have for a future video. If you enjoyed the video, please consider liking and subscribing. Huge thank you to my Ko-fi members and channel members whose names are on screen now. I really appreciate your support. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time in a new video.